Did you know that your smartphone could be leaking data, draining its battery, or even secretly tracking your location without you realizing it? Mobile security issues like unauthorized Wi-Fi connections, Bluetooth pairings, and overconsumption of data can put your privacy at risk. But what if you could lock down your phone and protect your data in just a few steps? In this video, we'll show you how to secure your mobile OS and apps, from preventing unauthorized access to stopping data leaks. Ready to take control of your mobile security? Let's dive in. Security Mobile OS and Applications. In this course, we'll look at how to fix OS issues on mobile phones, and we'll also talk about app security. You've probably already had a bad quarter of an hour because of a smartphone, which usually happens to everyone. We will see the most common symptoms which are causing your problem and how to find a solution. Network signal loss, and we start with the loss or weakening of your network signal. This causes difficulties in making or receiving calls. This phenomenon occurs mainly for three reasons. The first is that your mobile device may be blocked by your carrier. That is to say, your SIM card or even your smartphone can be registered on the blacklist of operators. What causes this service interruption? The second reason is that you are not in a coverage area of one of the telephone operators. The closer you are to an antenna, the better the data will receive. And the last reason is that it can come from a failure of your mobile antenna, or from a malicious application that causes problems. Power loss. Let's move on to a whole other problem, which is a rapid decrease in your battery. If you feel that your battery is draining faster than usual, there are three things you could try before considering changing it. The first thing to check is that the brightness of your screen is not too high. Sometimes we don't necessarily realize it, but instead of having an automatic brightness adjustment, it is constantly set to full speed. The more you decrease the brightness, the more you optimize your battery life. The second thing to check is to make sure that you don't have too many apps running in the background. Depending on the model of your mobile device, you must be careful not to have too many applications running in the background. To make sure you've closed all your apps, you can restart your phone. It won't hurt it. And the last thing to check is to scan your device with an antivirus to look for possible malware. Malware usually runs in the background and consumes a lot of memory and network, which inevitably causes a quick drain of your battery. Slow connection speeds. Now, let's move on to the problem of very slow connection or data loss. If you no longer have a network connection at all, then the ideal would be to check that your device is not in airplane mode or that the cellular data network is not disabled, because otherwise you will only receive calls, but no notification from your favorite social networks. If you have a signal, but it is very weak, well, as we saw just before, it would be interesting to get closer to the source in order to increase the quality of reception. And even if you have a very good signal, you realize that data reception is slow, it's probably because you've reached the limits of your plan, and therefore, you automatically switch to limited speed. Unintentional Wi-Fi connection. Let's move on to a completely different problem, which is also a safety hazard. This is the unauthorized connection to a Wi-Fi network. Connecting to a public Wi-Fi network is a risk to the security of your data, but also to the performance of your device. By default, many devices are configured to access any wireless connection, prioritizing signal quality. And usually, public Wi-Fi allows mobile devices to connect to it automatically, which is a risk to your device, because these Wi-Fi are not at all secure connections. And it can even be a trap of a malicious person, which can also be called a pirate. That's why you need to make sure that this feature is disabled by default on your mobile device. unintentional Bluetooth pairing. Let's move on to a similar problem, which is unauthorized Bluetooth pairing. Even though Bluetooth is described as a short-range, low-power type of connection, it can also be vulnerable. If your Bluetooth is on all the time, then our Caribbean pirate might try to connect to it. Although auto-snapping is usually disabled by default, it's best not to leave it open all the time, which is very difficult if you have hands-free kits or connected watches. After that, it's much less risky than hanging a public terminal with Wi-Fi. Loss of personal data. Let's move on to a completely different problem, which is the loss of personal data. Malicious people usually take advantage of security flaws on our mobile devices to break into them and steal data. This type of problem can be either malicious or accidental. When we say accidental, it is in the case you lose your data because you have not secured your data after entrusting it to a person. And the term malicious is in the event that our famous hacker manages to break into your personal data. To avoid losing your data or having it stolen, you could put certain things in place, such as enable encryption of your files using an app so that your data cannot be readable by a malicious person. You can also enable options to lock and wipe the device automatically in case of loss. To avoid, as we have seen, connecting to open or public Wi-Fi networks. This is very dangerous. And if you really want to connect to it, well, in this case, it would be interesting to use a VPN connection, which allows you to remain anonymous while browsing the internet. And the last precaution is to turn off the sharing services of your Wi-Fi or Bluetooth connection if they are not in use. Let's move on to data overconsumption. If your phone sits idle for a good part of the day and you have an overconsumption of data, then your device is being misused by a malicious application or person. This type of problem can have a serious impact on your data usage, but also on your battery life. To control the use of your data consumption, you could activate a limit on the use of your internet connection on your mobile. Whether you're with Android or Apple, this feature can be found in your mobile device's network settings. Unauthorized access to the account. Now, let's look at the problems of unauthorized access to your account. A malicious person who manages to retrieve your login credentials can extract a whole lot of information about your private or professional life. That's why, as the saying goes, prevention is better than cure. You need to make sure you have a password that can be respected. That is to say, to avoid all those who are easy to guess. And even better, the ideal is to set up two-factor authentication to prevent unauthorized access to your social media accounts, banking, or any other account that you can access through your mobile device. Unauthorized location tracking. Now let's talk about your mobile device's GPS, which is able to determine your exact location to within a few meters. To prevent other apps from using your GPS, you can simply ask to disable it in your phone's privacy settings. Unauthorized activation of camera and microphone. And the last point we're going to see in this course is about the misuse of your camera and microphone on your mobile device. Your device's camera and microphone can be used by a third party to monitor you. Even if it is still useful in the case of parental control, unless you are under guardianship, you have to be careful when you install an application that is not part of Google or Apple Store. This type of unauthorized access can be detected by looking at the consumption of your resources, and in particular, your internet bandwidth.